Hello people, I welcome you back to yet another video on gun testing. Today I will be doing a type of formatting on what the best type of weapons are. For this video, I'll be focusing on the pistols, the submachine guns, shotguns, and also the assault rifles. That of which are free, that you can grab from either here or there, the AK in the corner, and the HK-42, or 412. Not 412, 416, including the Atar 21, and so forth. I will also be showcasing a rating from worst to best, and I will explain what does what and how much damage goes into which type of weapon. I hope y'all enjoy the video. If you do, feel free to comment down below. Tell me if you want me to do the Game Pass weapons next, and including the Gun Master as well. But without further ado, on to the video. Alright, so starting us off on our list is a Atar 21, a decently well-rounded weapon that you can find next to Jeff as you first spawn into the game. The Atar 21 does 31 headshot, 16 body, and within the neck region of the dummy or a user, mainly it depends on where you hit them, it does 21 damage. Pretty well rounded, and overall a decent starting weapon, which holds 961 bullets, a considerable amount if you put it into perspective, and decent reload time. For the list of which I put this in, I'd have to put it at a B, because although its mobility is pretty decent and it's well rounded, it does have a little bit of a slower shooting rate, and of course it's not always the ideal unless you want to just go for a decently well rounded weapon. Then this would be your choice. Next up on the list has to be the HK-416. Different from the other weapons, this one is kinda janky in the aspect of what you decide to use, such as a scope, for any type of scope really. It just kinda gets in the way and is generally uncomfy to utilize. However, the weapon does 30 heady, 15 body. Overall, it's not the best choice. Neither would it be my first choice. It's still pretty good, but overall it's not exactly highly that I would use it. I would have to put this in C, mainly because of a few junctions that really kind of mess the gun up, including the scope, just how the iron is. It doesn't really match up, and it's kind of to the left, and just overall it's not a good choice. Now this is more or less my personal preference, but yeah. Next up on the list is the AR-15. 40 headshot, 18 body. Overall, it's a good weapon. However, one of the major downsides of this specific weapon was it was said to be semi-only. Depending on how fast you can click, you can make it auto, or if you have an auto clicker, then you can just make an automatic. Now, despite it being a decent overall damaging weapon, I'd also have to put this at a lower level, mainly because of the fact that it's semi-auto only. Now, same with the scope, it just looks weird. And although that is the Picatinny rail, I personally wouldn't suggest utilizing this specific weapon. And the neck region is 24, so overall decent, but not advised to utilize. Next up on the list is the AUG Wencher chambered in 5.56, I believe. This weapon is one of my favorites, and I normally specifically utilize this weapon in free-for-all and just overall as the basic. It does 35 headshot, 18 body, and 24 neck. Now, different from the AR-15 being in the C rank, I'd have to put this AUG at an A. Why it specifically is not going to be an S rank is because out of most of the damaging assault rifles, this shoots the fastest. If I was to compare it to anything other than this, the slowest would have to be the AK-47. But the AK has its own upsides for that misconception. Next up on the list is the M4A1, utilized and pretty much well known in the community as one of the better assault rifles, including being utilized by the US military and also utilized by Observant Halo. Overall, compared to the AUG, the M4 is a pretty good choice, being put around at A rank as well. Now, with testing the weapon itself, it has decent fire rate, decent reload time, being a little bit slower than the AUG, but still a considerable amount. And just overall, it's a pretty well-rounded weapon. 35 headshot, 18 for neck, and then for the body, 15. As you can see, pretty well-rounded, and definitely a good choice to utilize. Next up on the list is the FG42. Out of all the other assault rifles, the FG42 does the most damage, being 50 for headshot, 34 for the neck, 22 for the body. Now, the FG42 I would have to place in S, mainly because of not only the damage output, but it has a decent fire rate and decent reload rate. However, it's not really a first choice of weapon, mainly because of how slow it does shoot at the start. Plus, it runs the ammo down. It still is a pretty good choice of weapons, and depending on how you want to utilize it, it's pretty good, as you can see. Here we have the Famas. Normally, this weapon it's odd to say the least. You don't really see this being used as often, but you are able to find it over there, right below the NPC kills. It has a slower reload rate. Its damage is 31 for head, 16 for body, and then 16 neck, 13 body. It's got a decent rate of fire, and if you get over the weird Picatinny rail or scope, it's pretty decent. And same with the reload animation, pretty decent. I would have to put this as a B since it's got decent damage. It's decently well rounded. And yeah. To finalize all three weapons, I'd have to put the AK-47 in the A ranking position. Now, despite the AK being relatively lower in rate of fire and decently slower in terms of reload, it does 38 headshot, 20 body, and 16 for the feet. Why I specifically put the AK-47 in the A ranking spot is because it's decently well rounded. As you can see, decent damage. If you mix it up with other weapons like the M4, you can do a pretty good amount of damage. And now, of course, it depends as to how you utilize it. But overall, decently well rounded. And yeah. Next up on the list is the submachine guns. Now, normally you wouldn't really see people use these submachine guns all that much. They're still pretty well rounded. The UMP-45 does 38 headshot, or 39 at times. It does 39 headshot, 27 body or neck, and 17 body. Overall, pretty well rounded weapon, decent rate of fire, and pretty good headshot damage. 25 clip and decent reload speed. Not bad at all. I would have to put this in the A ranking position because of that. And without further ado, on to the next weapon. Next up on the list is the little devil itself, the Uzi. Now, the Uzi in itself is one of the faster free-firing weapons, with the fastest fire rate, or quite literally all the weapons that are free, excluding the VIP, military, World War II, and classic Roblox game passes. It does 27 for headshot, 19 for neck, and 12 for body. It can really do some damage, and it can really help you clear a room. Or overall, it's good to have in general. I would have to put this probably in a sub A to B, considering it does have faster fire rate, but at the same time it also has its own downfall. Of course, it does decent damage for being fast fire rate, but with other weapons like the UMP, which also does a decently good amount of speed, it's a good choice weapon, but I wouldn't suggest utilizing it all that much. Now, of course, it depends on how you want to do it, but it is A and low B, or really A/B. Next up on the list, and being the final submachine gun based caliber, or not caliber, but weapon, is the MP5. Overall, the MP5 in itself is a decent, well-rounding, fast fire rate weapon, being 34 for the head, or 33 at times. It depends on where you shoot, I guess, or how far you are. It does 17 for the body, or neck, and then 15 for body. It has decent fire rate, and I'd also have to put this in a similar position to the Uzi, as out of all the other weapons for submachine gun, the is the best, being 40. Well, it depends as to how far away you are. Like, as you can see, it does a little bit farther, or it does a little less damage depending on how far you are. But yeah, I'd also have to put the MP5 in a similar position to the Uzi. Next up on the list are the pistols. Personally, I'm not a fan of many of the pistols, like the Glock, in which you can see why here. The Glock does 26 for headshot, 13 for body, and then 11 for... I keep on mixing up neck and body. The neck does 33, or 13, and then, of course, body does 11. Decently, I wouldn't suggest utilizing this at all, mainly because of its poor fire rate and lack of damage. Also, to clarify, the Glock would have to be a D. Next up on the list is the M1911, chambered in Smith & Wesson, I believe. Now, the M19 before was very bad. Now, at the time, I wasn't really doing YouTube, or considered it, so I couldn't really showcase the difference between that M9 and this one. This M9 does 57 headshot, 21 neck, or 29 neck, and 24 body. Decently, it's well-rounded, does a good amount of damage, it has a decent fire rate, and out of all the pistols, this is one of the better ones, being in a similar class to the Submachine Guns for Uzi and MP5 at a A/B rating. Next up is the Revolver. Now, with the Revolver specifically, it's made to be slow. Of course, the knockback also is kind of weird, but overall, the Revolver in itself is a very well-rounded weapon, doing 105, or really an insta-kill for a headshot, 31 for body, and 26 for body. Or 42 for neck, 36 for body. Or really depending on where you shoot. Now, the Revolver specifically is decent to put with a scope. Now, I wouldn't advise doing this unless you are decent at sniping, then this would be a decent choice to add. But on to the next one. Next up on the list has to be the Deagle. Before, the other Deagle, which you can still get in the 1v1 arena, is more or less better than this newer Deagle. Now, personally, the only thing this Deagle has going is the animations, as you can see right here. Now, as an overall standard, the Deagle itself is a extremely high damaging pistol, doing 114 for headshot, up close, similar. For neck, it does 45, which is pretty good, and then for the body, it does 28. Overall, I would have to put the Deagle in probably a sub B, as it's still a really good weapon, but it's complicated. I've never really been a fan of the Deagle, as it, not only because of the knockback, but just with how the new one is. For the other Deagle, which I prefer much more than this one, I would have to put this one at a B and the other one at an A. The other one was more accurate, although it did less damage. It was just easier to shoot, and really overall it was better. You can find this Deagle up here, and depending on what type of class you want to go with, it really depends. For the second to last pistol, being the Beretta M9, it's one of the best in my opinion. Whereas the Revolver is good, and being a sub B as well with the Deagle, I would have to personally put this up at an A, because the fast fire rate, the headshot damage, which is more accurate than the other weapons, the neck air region, and also the feet, or body. Overall, this is a fantastic weapon, and one of the more used ones in my opinion. Now, with the M1911, although it does do less damage, the ammo capacity of this M9 is more, which basically allows you to shoot easier. Now, the one downside that I've found with this specific weapon has to be the overall flash. However, if you use a off-speed suppressor, it makes it better to shoot, and it's easier on the eyes. Now, do note, suppressors in this game do not lower the amount of damage a pistol does, or really for any type of weapon. To finalize all of the weapons, for the pistols specifically, I would have to... The Ruger in itself is a good modeled weapon. It shoots well, but personally I'm not a fan of it. Now, it does decent headshot, being 28, with the neck being 14, and then body being 12, which again is good. Personally, it wouldn't really be my suggestion to use, mainly because of a few reasons. The first being the less ammo. Now, if this is all that you had, then yeah, you can use it. But if not, a better suggestion would be the Beretta, the Deagle, M1911, or the Revolver, depending on what you want to go for. Of course, again, I don't mean to put shame on the Ruger, but not really a fan. I'd have to put this at a D. D to sub C, but like the Glock, it's not good. Now, being the case that these were all the pistols, submachine guns, and assault rifle based calibers, there are two more categories, being the shotguns and snipers. I will be doing a separate video in regards to those, and really overall I hope you enjoyed this video. I will be showcasing what my personal preference over the ratings are, and just for you to have, it could be there. I'll also be showing this in the description below. But without further ado, I hope y'all enjoyed the video, and I will be doing these snipers and shotguns next.